I remember the exact moment my mother's voice decided to stop sounding like my mother. It was early afternoon, the kind of quiet hour where the house hums instead of speaks. Sunlight leaned against the living room wall like it had nowhere else to go. Grandpa was beside me, sunk into his favorite chair, the one with the torn armrest and the smell of old books and cedar. He was alive. Warm. Breathing. Complaining about the way the world rushed past people like him. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Something in my chest tightened before my hand even reached it, like my body already knew what the words would be, even if my mind didn't. Hello? There was a pause. A collective inhale on the other side. My parents always did that thing where they synchronized their silence before delivering news, like bad information needed harmony. My father spoke first. Sweetheart, your grandfather passed away this morning. The sentence landed wrong. Not heavy. Not sharp. Just misplaced. Like furniture shoved into the wrong room. I looked at Grandpa. He was right there. Legs crossed. Hands folded. Watching a dust particle drift through sunlight like it was a performance meant just for him. He turned his head slowly and met my eyes. And he smiled. Not confused. Not afraid. Knowing. My mother continued, her voice already rehearsed for grief. It was peaceful. In his sleep. I nodded into the phone, even though she couldn't see me. My mouth followed the expected choreography. I'm so sorry, I said, because that's what you say when you're told someone you love has vanished from the world. But Grandpa was still breathing. My father cleared his throat. That sound always meant there was more. There was always more with him. We also need to talk about the estate. Of course. Grief, for my parents, had an expiration date of about 12 seconds. There was a will, my mother added quickly, like she'd been waiting to say it. Everything is very clear. I could hear papers shuffling. Legal confidence. We inherit the house, the land, the accounts. All of it, my father said. Then, a pause, longer this time. Deliberate. You're not mentioned. There it was. Clean. Surgical. You get nothing. The words echoed louder than they should have. I stared at the wall behind Grandpa, where old photos hung, me as a child on his shoulders, him laughing without restraint, my parents standing a step apart, already divided by something unnamed. My mother rushed in to soften the blow. It's not personal. He probably just forgot. You know how he was at the end. Grandpa let out a low chuckle beside me. A real one. My lips curved upward before I could stop them. I smiled. On the other end of the line, silence. Why are you smiling? My father asked sharply. I looked directly at Grandpa now. His eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. Clearer than when he was alive in the way people understand alive. Because suddenly I understood something my parents didn't. They thought the story was over. I said nothing. Just breathed. Just smiled. Are you there? My mother asked. Yes, I said softly. I'm here. Grandpa leaned closer, his voice low, intimate, meant only for me. Don't say a word yet, he whispered. Let them believe what they need to believe. My smile widened. And in that moment, sitting next to a man the world had already buried, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. The truth was still breathing. And it was on my side. Check if you're already subscribed to the channel. If not, subscribe, click like, and leave a comment about where you're watching from. It helps more than you can imagine. Grandpa didn't fade. That was the first thing that terrified me. After I hung up the phone, I sat there waiting for the moment people always describe, the chill, the silence, the empty space where a presence used to be. I expected the room to feel hollow, like grief had suctioned the air out of it. Instead, Grandpa shifted in his chair and reached for the blanket. "Do you mind?" he asked, nodding toward his knees. "It's colder when they think you're gone." I swallowed hard. His voice wasn't echoing. It wasn't distant. It sounded exactly the way it always had, warm, slightly amused, edged with patience. The same voice that used to read to me when my parents were too busy arguing about money they didn't yet have. "You're here," I whispered. He smiled again, but this time there was sadness in it. Not fear. Sadness for me. "Yes," he said. "And no. Depends on who's asking." I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. My heart pounded like I'd been running from something I couldn't see. I circled the room once, then twice, as if movement could prove reality wrong. When I turned back, he was still there. Same chair. Same posture. Same eyes that had always looked at me like I was the only honest thing left in the family. "They think you're dead," I said. "I know. They're dividing everything. Already." A pause. "Did they tell you you get nothing?" I laughed then. A broken sound. Sharp at the edges. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "That figures." I felt something rise in my chest, anger, maybe. Or relief. Or the grief that had been delayed, stacking interest. "They're lying," I said. "Aren't they?" Grandpa leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "They're lying to themselves," he said. "Which is worse?" I sat back down, my legs suddenly weak. "They forged the death certificate," he continued calmly, like he was explaining the weather. "Doctor owes your father a favor. Hospice papers were never filed correctly. Legally. I'm in a gray place." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means I'm dead on paper," he said. "But not done." My skin prickled. Outside, a car passed. Life went on. Somewhere, my parents were probably already planning renovations. Talking about selling the land Grandpa had sworn would never be touched. "They couldn't wait," I murmured. Grandpa's jaw tightened. I'd only seen that expression once before, when my father tried to convince him to sell the house early, before expenses piled up. "I wanted to see who they'd become when they thought I was gone," he said quietly. Turns out, I didn't have to wait long. I looked at him, really looked at him. "You planned this." A long breath. "I planned for truth," he said. "I planned for protection. Especially for you." My stomach dropped. "For me?" He reached into the inside pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a folded envelope. Old paper. Handwritten name. Mine. "I changed the will 2 years ago," he said. "Legally. Quietly. Your parents never knew. Everything they think they inherited is temporary." My pulse roared in my ears. "Then why?" "Because they needed to show their hands," he interrupted gently. "And they just did." The envelope felt heavier than it should when I took it. Like it carried more than paper. Like it carried years. "What happens now?" I asked. Grandpa leaned back, the chair creaking softly. "Now," he said, "you listen. And you wait. And you let them keep smiling." He met my eyes. "Because the truth always hurts more when it arrives late." I didn't open the envelope right away. That might sound strange, considering what was inside could rewrite my entire life, but something in Grandpa's eyes told me to wait. Not because of suspense, but because timing mattered more than truth. He watched me place the envelope on the table between us, right next to his untouched cup of tea. "They're going to move fast now," he said. "People always do when they think they've won." As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "We'll handle the funeral arrangements. No need for you to stress yourself." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. "They're planning your funeral," I said quietly. Grandpa huffed a short laugh. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." That made my throat tighten. "They don't want me there," I added. "Not really." "No," he said. "They want control. Presence complicates lies." I didn't reply to the message. Silence was safer. Silence let people reveal themselves. We sat there for a while, listening to the house breathe. Every tick of the clock sounded louder than it used to. I realized then how much of my childhood had been spent inside this place while my parents chased futures that never quite loved them back. "Do you remember when you were 8, Grandpa said suddenly, "and your father tried to make you sign a piece of paper?" I frowned. The memory surfaced slowly, like something long submerged. "He said it was for school," I murmured. Grandpa nodded. "It was a transfer of custodial savings." I stopped it. My chest tightened. "They've been practicing this kind of taking for a long time," he continued. "They just finally believe they're invisible." I reached for the envelope again. "Can I read it now?" "Yes," he said. "But understand something first." I looked up. "The will isn't just about money," he said. "It's about exposure." I slid my finger under the seal. Inside was a letter. Not legal language. Not signatures. Just Grandpa's handwriting. Steady. Intentional. "If you are reading this, then my children have already told you I am gone." I swallowed. "They will say I left you nothing. This is how you will know they have learned nothing from me." My hands trembled. What they do not know is that everything they touch right now is held in trust. A temporary illusion, designed to test character. I glanced up at Grandpa. He nodded once. The real inheritance was never meant for them. The letter continued, listing accounts, properties, and, my breath caught, documents. Proof. Years of records. Quiet transfers. Contingencies. And then the line that made my blood run cold. "If my children attempt to sell, move, or claim ownership before the truth is revealed, all assets will automatically revert to you." I let the paper fall into my lap. "They can't touch anything," I whispered. "No," Grandpa said. "And if they try, they lose everything." My phone buzzed again. Another message. "We're meeting the lawyer tomorrow. You don't need to come." I looked at Grandpa. "They're walking straight into it," I said. He smiled, but this time there was no warmth in it. "They always underestimate patience," he said. "They confuse silence with weakness." I leaned back, heart racing. "What do we do now?" Grandpa stood. For the first time since the phone call, he stood. "I've already done my part," he said. "Now it's your turn." He placed a hand on my shoulder. It felt real. Solid. "When they call you tomorrow," he said, "you answer. You listen. And you say one thing." "What?" He leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell them you'd like to see Grandpa's lawyer. In person." I felt a slow smile spread across my face. "And then?" I asked. Grandpa's eyes darkened with something that looked like peace. "Then," he said, "we let the dead speak." They scheduled the funeral for Friday. 2 days after they told me Grandpa was dead. 2 days after they divided a life he was still quietly living in the same house they planned to inherit. My mother called that morning, her voice wrapped in practiced sorrow. "We thought it would be best if it were small," she said. "Private. Family only." Family. The word tasted bitter. I'll be there, I replied. A pause. Suspicion slipped through her tone like a crack in porcelain. You don't have to, she said quickly. It might be confusing for you. I smiled to myself. I wouldn't miss it, I said. When I hung up, Grandpa was standing by the window, watching the wind move through the trees he'd planted decades ago. They chose Friday because it's efficient, he said. Weekends cost more. I nodded. They don't know what to do with grief unless it has a budget. He turned to me then, his expression serious. Listen carefully, he said. Today is important. Not for them, but for you. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. They will perform, he continued. They'll cry at the right moments. They'll say the right things. But they will be watching you. For what? I asked. For cracks, he said. Guilt always looks for mirrors. The funeral home was colder than it needed to be. White walls. Artificial flowers. Soft music meant to fill silence, not honor memory. There was a closed casket at the front of the room. Empty. My parents stood near it, dressed in black that still smelled new. My mother dabbed her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup. My father shook hands, accepting condolences like tips. When they saw me, something flickered. Not relief. Calculation. I took a seat in the second row. Right beside me, Grandpa sat down. No one else noticed. Strange, he murmured. All these people talking about me like I've stopped listening. The service began. A distant cousin spoke. Then a neighbor. Stories trimmed of truth, polished for comfort. Grandpa leaned toward me, whispering corrections. I hated fishing. I never said that. That watch was fake. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Then my mother stood. She spoke about sacrifice. About how Grandpa trusted them with his legacy. About how he was at peace knowing his affairs were in order. Grandpa's hand tightened on the armrest. She's lying, I whispered. I know, he said calmly. So does she. I felt it then, the shift. The room's energy changing. Eyes drifting toward me. My father noticed too. His jaw set. They were waiting for me to break. To cry. To protest. To ask questions. I didn't. When the service ended, my father approached me near the casket. We're going to the lawyer this afternoon, he said casually. Just final paperwork. I tilted my head. Which lawyer? He blinked. Just once. Grandpa's, I added. I'd like to be there. The silence between us stretched. My mother stepped in. That won't be necessary. I think it will, I said softly. Behind me, Grandpa stood. They just heard the ground shift, he whispered. My father forced a smile. You're not in the will. I know, I replied. I read it. That did it. The smile slipped. My mother's eyes widened just a fraction too much. We'll see you there, my father said stiffly. As they walked away, Grandpa let out a slow breath. They've started panicking, he said. People only rush when they realize time isn't on their side. I stared at the empty casket. Is this where it turns? I asked. Grandpa looked at me, something like pride in his eyes. No, he said. This is where it reveals. The law office smelled like old paper and patience. Not the sterile kind of patience my parents pretended to have, but the kind earned by watching people lie to themselves for decades. The kind that doesn't rush because it knows time always tells. Grandpa walked beside me as we entered. Pay attention to faces, he whispered. Truth always arrives before words. My parents were already there. My father stood near the desk, shoulders squared, rehearsing authority. My mother sat, legs crossed, clutching her purse like it might run away with secrets. And behind the desk, the lawyer looked up. Then smiled. Not at my parents. At me. There you are, he said warmly. I was wondering when you'd come. My father stiffened. We're here to finalize the estate. The lawyer nodded slowly. Of course. Please, have a seat. Grandpa leaned closer. This is the moment they realize the stage isn't theirs. We sat. The lawyer opened a folder thick with years. Before we proceed, he said, I need to clarify something. My mother interrupted. We already went over the will. Yes, the lawyer said. A will. He turned his gaze to me. But not the final one. Silence. My father laughed once, sharp and dismissive. There is no other will. The lawyer slid a document across the desk. There is, he said calmly. And it was filed 2 years ago. My parents stared. My mother's fingers tightened around her purse. This document, the lawyer continued, places all assets in a conditional trust. My father's face flushed. Conditional? Yes, the lawyer said. Meaning ownership has not yet transferred. That's impossible, my mother whispered. The lawyer's eyes flicked briefly, just briefly, to the empty chair beside me. Grandpa nodded. Ownership, the lawyer said, depends on compliance. My father stood abruptly. Compliance with what? The lawyer folded his hands. Honesty, he said. And restraint. I felt my pulse in my throat. The lawyer turned to me now. You were named executor of the trust. My parents froze. I was. I asked, even though Grandpa had already told me. Yes, he said. And sole beneficiary upon any breach. My mother's voice trembled. Breach of what? The lawyer slid another document forward. Attempted sale of the property, he said. Which your husband initiated this morning. The room spun. My father's mouth opened. Closed. Grandpa exhaled slowly, like a man finally setting down a heavy bag. That single act, the lawyer continued, triggers full reversion of assets. My mother stood. This is a mistake. It's a consequence, the lawyer corrected. I looked at my parents, really looked. For the first time, they weren't towering figures. They were small. Cornered by their own urgency. So, I said softly. I inherit everything. The lawyer nodded. Effective immediately. My father sank back into his chair. My mother stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Grandpa smiled. Told you, he whispered. The lawyer closed the folder. One more thing, he said. There is a clause regarding misrepresentation of death. My parents looked up sharply. What do you mean? My father asked. The lawyer met his eyes. It means, he said evenly, that this meeting is not the end. Grandpa's hand rested on my shoulder. It's just the beginning, he murmured. The air felt different after the lawyer said it. Not heavier, sharper. Like the room itself had decided to stop pretending. My parents didn't speak right away. They just sat there, absorbing the sound of their own breathing, realizing it was suddenly louder than their authority. My father kept adjusting his cufflinks, a nervous habit from years of pretending control was something you could wear. My mother looked at me last. Not with anger. With calculation. You don't have to do this, she said softly. Families fix things privately. Grandpa let out a low, humorless laugh beside me. That's her favorite lie, he whispered. I didn't do anything, I replied. You did. The lawyer stood, signaling the meeting's end. All further communication regarding the estate will go through the executor, he said, nodding toward me. This meeting is adjourned. Just like that. Decades of entitlement ended with a sentence. In the hallway, my father followed me. Fast. Desperate. You think this means you've won? He hissed under his breath. I turned to face him. No, I said. I think this means you've lost. His face twisted. You wouldn't exist without us. Grandpa stepped closer. She existed despite you, he said quietly. My father flinched. Not because he heard Grandpa, but because something in my eyes told him I wasn't afraid anymore. That night, back at the house, I walked through rooms I'd lived in my whole life, but never owned. Grandpa followed slowly, touching the walls, the shelves, the doorframes. Strange, he said. How ownership changes memory. I stopped in the study. This was always your room, I said. He nodded. And now it's yours. But understand this, inheritance isn't a gift. It's a responsibility. I sat in his chair. They're not done, I said. Are they? No, he replied. People who lose power don't grieve it. They hunt for it. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly. I stared at the screen. Grandpa leaned in. It already is. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the folder the lawyer had given me. Pages of truth. Evidence. Paper trails that told a story my parents had spent years editing. At the bottom was a final note from Grandpa, written in the same careful handwriting. When they realize they can't take from you, they will try to take you. My chest tightened. What does that mean? I whispered. Grandpa looked at me, his expression grave. It means, he said, you're about to learn who they really are when the masks come off. Outside, a car slowed near the house. Then stopped. I stood, heart racing. Are you afraid? Grandpa asked gently. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm ready. He smiled. That's my girl. The knock came at 11:43 p.m. Not loud. Not polite. 3 short hits against the door, spaced just far enough apart to suggest restraint instead of respect. I was in the kitchen with Grandpa, the lights low, the house settled into that deep nighttime quiet where every sound feels intentional. There it is, he said calmly. The moment they stop pretending. My phone buzzed at the same time. A text from my mother. We're outside. I didn't answer. The knocking came again, harder this time. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. My parents stood on the porch. No tears. No black clothes. No performance. Just impatience. My father's jaw was tight. My mother's arms were crossed like she'd already decided the conversation was over. They didn't come to talk, I said. Grandpa shook his head. They came to test boundaries. I opened the door, but only a few inches. The chain stayed on. What do you want? I asked. My mother forced a smile that never reached her eyes. We need to come in. No, I said. My father stepped forward. This is our house. It isn't, I replied. Not anymore. Something snapped in his eyes. You think a piece of paper changes blood, he said. Yes, I said softly. It does. Behind me, Grandpa stood close. Solid. Steady. You're being manipulated, my mother said, her voice lowering. By people who don't care about you. I almost laughed. By Grandpa. I asked. They stiffened. My father scoffed. Don't say his name like that. Why? I asked. Because he's dead. Silence. Thick. Immediate. My mother swallowed. This isn't funny. I know, I said. That's why I'm not laughing. My father leaned closer to the door. You owe us. Grandpa's voice was right in my ear now. Tell him the truth, he said. Not the loud one, the sharp one. I met my father's eyes through the crack. I don't owe you what you took, I said. I owe myself what you never gave. My mother's face hardened. This ends badly, she warned. I nodded. 4 liars. I closed the door. The knocking exploded, fists now, not hands. Open this door, my father shouted. Now. I stepped back, heart pounding but steady. Grandpa placed a hand on my shoulder. They want you afraid, he said. Because fear makes people negotiable. The pounding stopped. Then my mother's voice, suddenly soft. Please, she said. We're still your parents. I closed my eyes. I know, I whispered. That's why this hurts. I walked to the phone and dialed a number the lawyer had given me earlier that day. Security. Outside, I heard my father curse. Footsteps retreated. A car door slammed. Silence returned. I leaned against the wall, shaking now that it was over. They'll come back, I said. Yes, Grandpa replied. But not like this. I looked at him. Then how? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. With a lie big enough to destroy you. I didn't sleep that night. The house stayed too quiet, like it was listening for something. Every creak in the floorboard sounded like a decision being made without me. Grandpa sat in the armchair across from my bedroom door, the way he used to when I was sick as a child. They'll try to rewrite you next, he said. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he replied, they'll stop attacking the truth, and start attacking your credibility. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls. Messages. Notifications from people I hadn't spoken to in years. A headline stared back at me from a local news alert. Young woman claims dead grandfather is alive, family dispute turns disturbing. My stomach dropped. They went public, I whispered. Grandpa nodded. Of course they did. Public lies feel safer. Louder. I opened the article. Anonymous sources. Concerned relatives. Phrases like emotional distress, delusional attachment, mental health concerns. My mother's language. Polished. Clinical. Cruel. They're saying I imagined you, I said. They're saying you're inconvenient, Grandpa corrected. The article ended with a line that made my hands go cold. Sources indicate the family may pursue a wellness evaluation. They're trying to have me committed, I said. Yes, he replied gently. Because if you're unstable, nothing you say matters. I sank onto the bed. This lie, it's clean, I whispered. People will believe it. Grandpa stood and walked toward the window. They always believe the version that protects comfort, he said. But lies like this have a weakness. What? They require silence from the truth. A knock came at the door. Not the front door. The bedroom. 2 slow taps. Open up, a man's voice said. County services. My pulse spiked. Grandpa turned to me. Calm. Grounded. Remember, he said, I planned for this. I opened the door. 2 officials stood there. Clipboards. Neutral faces. The kind trained not to react. We just need to ask a few questions, one said. I nodded. Of course. They stepped inside. One glanced around. Do you live alone? No, I said. They both looked at me. With my grandfather, I added. Their pens paused. Grandpa stepped forward and sat in the chair between us. He's right here, I said. The woman softened her voice. And where is he now? I pointed. Silence. Then the man cleared his throat. We understand this is difficult. Grandpa leaned toward me. Now, he whispered. I reached for my phone and opened a file Grandpa had told me to prepare. Before you continue, I said, you should see this. I handed them the screen. A video began to play. Grandpa's face filled it. Alive. Speaking. Clear. If you are watching this, he said on the recording, it means my children have decided to erase me before they bury me. The officials stiffened. This video was recorded last week, I said. With timestamps. Witnesses. And copies already in legal custody. Grandpa smiled. They never considered evidence, he murmured. Only volume. The woman looked at me differently now. We'll need to review this, she said carefully. I welcome that, I replied. As they left, Grandpa turned to me. You see, he said. The lie almost worked. But it needed you quiet. I exhaled, shaky but standing. What happens now? I asked. Grandpa's expression darkened. Now, he said, they escalate. Sympathy. I heard you're not well. Your parents are worried. If you need help, we understand. They're building a narrative, I whispered. Yes, Grandpa said. And they're doing it through other people's mouths so their hands look clean. I scrolled until my chest hurt. Then I saw it. A message from my aunt, the one who stopped speaking to my parents years ago. Check the attic. Now. My heart skipped. What is it? Grandpa asked, already knowing. She never sides with them, I said. I grabbed the flashlight and climbed the narrow attic stairs. Dust coated everything. The air smelled like old cardboard and secrets that had waited patiently. In the far corner, behind boxes marked tax records and Christmas, I found a locked trunk. I looked at Grandpa. He nodded. That's the one they forgot. The lock was old. One hard pull snapped it. Inside, documents. Letters. Photographs. And a recorder. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the attic. Younger. Angrier. Unfiltered. Once the old man's gone, it's all ours. If she causes problems, we'll handle it. People believe parents. My hands started shaking. This is years old, I whispered. Yes, Grandpa said quietly. And still true. The final recording ended with a sentence that made my blood go cold. If she ever finds out, we'll say she's unstable. I sat back on my heels. They planned this, I said. They rehearsed it, Grandpa corrected. Downstairs, headlights swept across the living room walls. A car. Then another. I looked out the attic window. My parents. And someone else. A man in a suit. Their lawyer? I asked. No, Grandpa said, his voice hardening. Worse. A knock echoed through the house. Not fists. Authority. Open the door, a man's voice called. We have an emergency order. I clutched the recorder. They're trying to remove me, I said. Grandpa placed both hands on my shoulders, grounding me. No, he said. They're walking into the one place they can't escape. What do you mean? He met my eyes. You're not alone anymore. Sirens sounded in the distance. Not coming for the house. Coming to it. I smiled, slow and steady. Because for the first time, I understood something my parents never did. The truth doesn't run. It waits. The sirens stopped right outside the house. Blue and red light spilled through the windows, painting the walls in colors that didn't belong to fear anymore. They belonged to consequence. I walked downstairs slowly, the recorder heavy in my hand. My parents stood at the front door with the man in the suit, court-appointed, official, confident in the way people are when they believe paperwork protects them. My mother looked relieved when she saw the lights. My father looked angry. The man stepped forward. "We have an emergency order for a psychiatric evaluation," he said. "Please cooperate." I nodded. Calm. Almost peaceful. "Of course," I said. "But before anyone goes anywhere, you should listen to something." My father snapped. "This is ridiculous." I pressed play. His own voice filled the room. "People believe parents." The officers exchanged glances. My mother's face drained of color. "That recording," the man in the suit said carefully, "what is the date?" 8 years ago, I replied. "There are 12 more. Stored with my lawyer. And copies with 2 journalists." Silence fell like a held breath. Grandpa stood beside me. Proud. Solid. Whole. My father took a step back. "That's illegal." "No," one of the officers said. "What's illegal is filing false reports and attempting coercive confinement." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. The man in the suit adjusted his tie. "We may need to reassess." The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, are you safe here?" I looked around the house. At the walls that knew my name. At the chair Grandpa loved. At the man standing beside me who was supposed to be gone. "Yes," I said. "I am." My parents were escorted out, not in handcuffs, but not in control either. As the door closed behind them, my mother turned once. For the first time, she looked afraid of me. The lights faded. The house exhaled. I leaned against the wall, the adrenaline finally draining. "It's over," I whispered. Grandpa shook his head gently. "No," he said. "It's finished." I turned to him. "What happens to you now?" I asked. He smiled, the soft one. The goodbye one. "My job was to make sure you weren't erased," he said. "You don't need me to sit beside you anymore." My throat tightened. "I don't want you to go." "I know," he said. "But you're not alone now. You never were." The room felt warmer. Then quieter. Then empty. Weeks later, the house was officially mine. The story in the news changed tone. Words like false claims and manipulation replaced concern. Sometimes, when the sun hits the living room just right, I still feel him there. Not sitting. Standing. Watching me live. Because the truth is this. My parents said Grandpa passed away. They said they inherited everything. They said I got nothing. And I smiled. Because Grandpa was sitting next to me. And he made sure I inherited the one thing they never could. The truth. So that we can continue to bring you these stories, please help us reach 1,000 subscribers and meet our hours. We need to make this work profitable. Thank you, we're counting on you.